You spent 2 months grinding Aimlabs. Your scores are higher than ever. You hop into ranked confident, just to get one tapped by the enemy jet. So, was it all a waste? No, but you're missing a piece that nobody explains properly. I'm Daniel, I hit top 150 Radiant, played in the Valorant Challenges League, and I've coached close to 100 players at this point. And this is hands down one of the biggest misunderstandings I see about aim training. So first of all, let's get clear on what aim training is and isn't doing for you. Aim training isolates your mouse control. That's it. It takes the mechanical act of moving your mouse accurately and lets you practice it in a clean environment. What it improves is your raw aim, your pure mechanical ability to put your crosshair where you want it. Improving your raw aim raises your floor, meaning your worst days of aiming get better. You become more consistent and that feeling of "I can't hit anything today" happens less often. But raw aim is only half the equation. The other half is what I call in-game aim, and that's a completely different thing. In-game aim is your crosshair placement, how you pick, how you pre-aim calling spots, your strafing, all the stuff that happens inside Valorant that an aim trainer cannot teach you. And this is where the confusion starts. People grind aim trainers, get better aim, and they expect that to just show up in their games. And when it doesn't, they go, "Oh, aim trainers are useless," and quit. But the problem was never the aim trainer. The problem is they only trained half of what makes you accurate in Valorant. Now, here's where this gets interesting. Even on the raw aim side, which is the thing that aim trainers are supposed to help with, most people quit way too early to see results. Here's what I mean. The majority of people start aim training. They grind for a few weeks, they get to a decent level, let's call it platinum in Valorant terms, and they expect that to just transfer into Valorant. They expect to start winning more fights. And it doesn't really work like that. Getting to plat in an aim trainer means your mouse control went from basically nothing to slightly better. That's progress, but it's not enough to actually feel different in your games. The honest truth is you need to get significantly higher than that. Something closer to Immortal or even Radiant level in aim trainers benchmarks before your aim can really start to feel good and reliable. And most people never get there. They put in 3 weeks, don't see a rank change in Valorant, and they stop. Then they tell everyone aim training doesn't work. It's like going to the gym for 2 weeks, not seeing abs, and telling everyone that working out is a scam. You didn't give it enough time, but time alone isn't enough either. I've seen people with 1,000 hours in Aimlabs who are still stuck at an average level. At that point, the hours don't mean much. Something about how they're practicing isn't working. If you have put in serious time and you're not improving, the answer isn't more hours. It's probably that you need to change what you're doing in those sessions. And that brings us to something a lot of players completely ignore. That is almost as important as how you're training. I am talking about exercise selection. Every game needs different mouse control skills. Valorant is a tactical shooter. You cannot move while you shoot. So most of the time, the enemies you're fighting are standing still, or at least they should be. That means the most important skill for Valorant is static clicking. Targets appear, they're not moving, and you need to snap to them fast and accurately. The second most important one is speed switching. That's when you have to track a target briefly before switching to the next one. Think about this scenario. You pick a corner and catch someone mid-strafe. They're still moving, but you need to do a quick reactive flick, track them for just a moment while your cursor settles, and then fire. That's basically what speed switching trains. Now, let's talk about tracking. Full-on, sustained tracking like you'd need in a game like Apex Legends, where everyone is flying around while shooting, that's way less important in Valorant. If you have been spending most of your aim training time on tracking scenarios, and wondering why it's not helping your Valorant, that's definitely one of the reasons why. I'm not saying tracking is worthless. It helps with general mouse control, but if you're grinding 2 hours of tracking daily and 10 minutes of static clicking, your training doesn't match the game you're playing. Alright, everything I've said so far has been about raw aim. But here's the part that people don't want to hear. Your raw aim doesn't matter if your in-game mechanics won't let you use it. You can have the best raw aim in your entire rank and still lose every fight if your in-game mechanics are bad. here's an easy example to understand why. Imagine you have incredible flick aim. You can snap to any targets in Aimlabs, but in Valorant, you're still shooting while moving. Your crosshair lands on the guy's head perfectly, and the bullet goes into the ceiling because your character hadn't stopped yet. Your raw aim did its job, but your movement cancelled it out. Or imagine you have great aim, but your crosshair placement is terrible. You're walking around with your crosshair glued to the wall, so every single fight, you have to make a flick just to kill the enemy. You're making every single fight harder for yourself. That player on the right barely moved their mouse, and if they have done even a little bit of some training, the tiny adjustment is automatic. I see this in basically every coaching session I do below Diamond. The aim isn't the main problem. It's crosshair placement, peeking technique, not understanding when to hold an angle and when to peek it. And all the Aimlabs in the world won't fix those things. Let me run through the big three quickly. Crosshair placement. Crosshair placement is about keeping your crosshair at head high, always aimed where an enemy is most likely to appear. If you do this well, you barely have to aim at all. The kill is almost free because you're already on the target when they show up. Game sense. Game sense is about reading where enemies are, putting yourself in positions where you're only fighting one person at a time and playing off angles instead of sitting in the most obvious spot on the map. If you keep putting yourself in 1 versus 3 situations, you're going to die. Recoil control. Recoil control is about pulling your mouse down to counter the weapon's kick when you burst and spray. You might land an incredible first shot flick onto someone's head, but if you miss that first bullet and your spray goes straight into the sky because you didn't pull down, that flick meant nothing. If you want to hit Immortal, and I mean actually stay there, you need all three of these to be sharp. It's not like optional. I've coached students with Radiant level raw aim who were hard stack Ascendant because their mechanics were letting them down. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Daniel, what about top aimers? Those guys are insane at aim trainers and they destroy in Valorant. And here's why that doesn't really apply to you. Those players aren't just good at aim training. They're in the top fraction of a percent in the world. They excel at static clicking, tracking, speed switching, everything. Their raw aim is so far above average that it actually compensates for gaps in other areas. When a top aimer hops into a new game and immediately does well, it's not because aim trainers taught them that game. It's because their raw aim is so absurdly high that they can brute force their way through situations where a normal player will get punished. They pick an angle badly, crosshair is off, doesn't matter, they flick to the head in 80 milliseconds. But here's what you need to understand. You're not that. I am not that. 99.9% of people will never have that level of raw aim. So copying their approach, just grinding aim trainers and expecting it to carry you, doesn't really work. And then on the flip side, you see pro players who never touch aim trainers and they're still incredible. That's because they have played tactical shooters for 10, 15 years. Their in-game mechanics are so deeply ingrained that their raw aim developed naturally over thousands and thousands of hours of actual gameplay. And yeah, that works, but it takes years. And most people don't have that kind of time. If you want a structured approach to training both sides, raw aim and in-game mechanics, in a way that actually matches where you are right now, that's exactly what we do in the coaching community. Link is in the description. You can try it for free for 7 days. So here's the actual answer. If you want to improve as fast as possible, and I mean genuinely improve, you need to train both raw aim and in-game mechanics at the same time. Not one or the other, both. Your aim training builds your mouse control, so that when you need to make a correction in Valorant, your hand can do it. Your in-game mechanics make sure you rarely need big corrections in the first place. Maybe you're off by a tiny bit, and your raw aim handles that tiny adjustment. That's how it's supposed to work. Aim training isn't meant to make you flick across the screen every fight. It's meant to make the small adjustments clean and automatic. But if you only focus on in-game mechanics and ignore raw aim, that mouse control takes forever to develop on its own. You will get there eventually, but you're talking years instead of months. And if you only focus on aim training and ignore in-game mechanics, you will be the guy who hits every shot in the range and dies 8 times a half in rank. Your aim has nowhere to go because your positioning, your peeking, your movement, it's all working against you. So train both and give it real time, not 2-3 weeks. You're not going to see a massive change in a month. But if you stick with it for 3-4 months, you will look back at your gameplay from today and wonder, how have you ever played like that? I have watched this happen with my students over and over again. It works, but it's not magic and it's not instant. It's just putting in the right kind of work consistently over time. Let's do a quick recap. Aim training works, but it only works as one half of the equation. You need raw aim and in-game mechanics. Most people quit aim training before they're good enough to see results. And most people who do stick forget to develop the in-game side. So train both, be patient, stop looking for one trick that fixes everything. It doesn't exist. What exists is consistent, focused practice on the things that actually matter. If this helped you understand what's been holding you back, subscribe. Coaching community link is in the description.